Today I have the great privilege and pleasure to invite Kevin to an interview on the launch of the latest book, which is called Light in the Heart of Darkness. Now, before we go into this, a few words about Kevin. Now, Kevin is and has been the CEO of the Journey from day one, the co-founder of this organization and the beautiful work that the Journey is with Brandon Bays. He's her life partner, her husband. He's co-created many programs with Brandon on his own. He's the founder of Visionary Leadership, of some other programs that we have, which is the Enneagram Masterclass, Authentic Greatness. It goes on and on and on. I love Kevin's work. Anybody who is watching this interview and has had the privilege to be with you, to be of one of your retreats or seminars, would say the same. We all in love with the depth, with the beauty of the work that you share with the world. And now, the depression book, Light in the Heart of Darkness. It is your baby, Kevin. I know it's co-authored with Brandon, and but it's primarily your story. And depression is an endemic in the world. I believe there's about 360 million people officially diagnosed. And that doesn't speak about the vast range of people that are not officially diagnosed, but are in some kind of shutdown, anxiety, stress. Would you please just share a little bit about your side of this? What brought you to write the book?
Yes.
Just anything, please.
Of course, Gabby. First, thank you for that beautiful introduction. And yes, with this subject of depression, it's one that's really close to my heart. The statistics around the world are shocking and are getting more shocking, it seems, almost by the year. The figure of 360 million people diagnosed with depression is a few years old. I suspect at the moment it's closer to 400 million. They're estimating that in Western societies, anything between 1 in 10 and 1 in 8 people actually suffer from some form of depression. So it is a massive and debilitating problem around the world, and one that's particularly affecting Western cultures, Western countries. And it touches me deeply because it's something that I experienced from childhood without knowing what was taking place, often in denial of the fact or with lack of recognition of what I was actually going through. I was living through cycles of depression. It started from age 8 with a trauma that I just didn't know how to cope with. I had an accident with my young sister, my baby sister, when she was entrusted with me. I had an accident when I was pushing her in a pram and thought she had died. And the emotional tumult was so great that I didn't have the coping mechanisms. Even though she was unharmed, I had no way to deal with the strength of emotions that came following it, thinking, fearing, dreading that she was dead. And so my natural instinct, as with a lot of people, was to cope by shutting down, to shut down the intensity of the emotions, to try and put a cap on them, to try and deny that there was anything wrong when there was something really churned up and unreconciled in me. And that was the seed memory, the seed trauma that led to 30 years almost of cyclical depression. I was diagnosed first clinically age 16. And like with a lot of people, I didn't want to believe the diagnosis. I didn't want to accept the fact that I was clinically depressed, even though I was showing a lot of the symptoms of it. And so I just kind of battled on and fought on and tried to pull myself up by my bootstraps without any real understanding of what depression is, what it can do to you, and without any options for a healthy way out, was the truth. So I just struggled through life. And a lot of people around me would be surprised to understand that I was going through depression because I faked it, I think, so well. You know, I kind of pushed through circumstances, got angry with myself, tried to change my focus, tried to do new things, tried to cheer myself up, tried to distract myself, tried any technique that I could think of or invent in order to pull myself out of the gloom, to pull myself out of an essential state of feeling that life was pointless, hopeless, and that I had little or no value if I told the deepest truth. And so I would try anything, and that would boost my mood for a short period of time, but not really produce any lasting results. I would end up back in the same place of this, I mean, anything between feeling like a disconnect from life and feeling lethargic and just having the blues, through to periods of being collapsed on the sofa and feeling overwhelmed with uselessness and the emptiness of life itself. And that lasted in cycles, and eventually, I mean, the cycles just got worse and worse. As I got into my 30s, they got very deep and traumatic in themselves. And what changed was I came to the journey right at the start of Journeywork, when Brandon was just setting out with this new technique that she devised called the Journey. And I got a journey process, so a therapy with Journey back in 1994. And it was so radically different. It offered, I mean, entirely different advice from what I'd been told by psychologists, psychiatrists. It was entirely different from what I'd read in all the self-help books, the personal growth books that I've read. It was very different from the dogma of the religious and spiritual books I'd read. For the first time, someone just sat down with me and said, feel what you're feeling. No matter what it is, just feel it. And it was confusing and ultimately massively revealing to have someone with empathy, someone with some emotional, not just intelligence, but with emotional facility, to sit down with me and say, just allow it all to come. Not to cathart, not to beat pillows or scream it out, not to avoid, not to tell yourself a story about it, as we so often do, but just to feel it. And that was the doorway into a completely different experience of emotions and emotionality. I mean, for all of us, if we simply take this radical step of stopping and opening with what is, including the emotions that arise in any given moment in life, they lead somewhere else. They lead deeper. They lead to opening. They ultimately, if we separate the story from the emotion and just feel, just let go into the deeper and deeper feelings, they lead into an experience of the self, of the soul, of what we truly are at the deepest level. They lead into an experience of light in the heart of darkness, hence the title of the book. They literally, not metaphorically, reveal the light inside. They reveal, I mean, for me, it was revealing of what I'd been looking for all my life. And I found everything that I'd been searching for to be inside me. And so the journey offers amazing techniques to face the past and to clear the issues that are associated with it, to unclog ourselves, to unstick emotionally. And it offers ways to move forward healthily in life, in openness, with forgiveness, with clarity, with a sense of purpose that for me, for 37 years, was completely missing from my life. And of course, from the time I first experienced this back in 1994, the depression that I'd experienced just melted. It simply wasn't available anymore. It was like someone had come and pulled it out of my cells. I couldn't find it anywhere. All I could find was like the fullness, the essence of what I'd been looking for all my life. And of course, I fell in love with the work and started to volunteer with Brandon. And eventually, became full-time involved with Journeywork and fell in love with Brandon, as a woman. We got married and have partnered for many years now in refining, developing, deepening in the techniques that can help people. And it's become a complete passion of mine to let people know that what we're classically taught about depression is not true. It's treatable. It's a condition that we can accurately pinpoint some of the root causes of and pull those roots out so that we don't need to take the drugs, so that we can, really complete with this pattern and live productive, meaningful, fulfilling lives. And so, yes, hence the book. And I'm just hoping and praying that it gets out there and into the hands of people who suffer from depression and those who are associated with depression. Anyone who's working with those with depression, or any of those whose lives are impacted by their loved ones, their family members, their friends suffering from depression. I'm trusting that it can be a tool book that people can use the methodology, get online and use the audio recordings, so do the work that's in the book and free themselves.
I just wanted to ask what kind, how the book is structured. What can people expect when they get hold of the book? It was amazing for me to read it because it kind of took me through my own times of depression or suppression. And memories are popping up. But probably in your words, it would be lovely to just hear, what can somebody, how can they work with the book if somebody just gets the book now? Just a short.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you report that back, Gabby, because a big part of the book is laying out my experience and what I tried to do that didn't work, and ultimately what I did that did work. So I'm using my own life experience as the teaching here, if you like. And my invitation to the reader is to find out the ways in which my story and stories resonate with theirs. So the prayer is that it elicits, it brings to the surface their own version of these patterns. The book starts with a beautiful foreword by Brendan, who suffered depression from one period in her life, and lays that out in a very raw way. And so it starts with that. We look at some of the statistics around depression, but the book is not a textbook on depression. The book is really written from direct experience, mostly focused on what does work. And in order to get to what does work, we need to take a few steps first. And that's to first realize what depression is not, because there's a huge misunderstanding around the world of what depression actually is. I've mixed feelings, about current media articles on depression, because on one hand, I'm really happy that the taboos around naming depression, about admitting that we can experience depression, seem to be fading. So it's getting out there, it's getting talked about. That's a great thing. The thing that bothers me most is that I almost entirely see it described as this mental illness. And depression in itself is not a mental illness. If we look at it as a mental illness, we are going about treating it in horribly wrong ways. Depression can cause mental disruption. It can cause mental illness, but it's not what it is. It's not essentially what it is. If you look at mild depression, it can just be a feeling of disassociation, a feeling of being disconnected with life, a feeling of something missing, feeling like there's some less than ideal experience of life, and it's lasting. You wouldn't describe that as a mental illness. This is just a normal part of life for a lot of people. The difficulty is when depression gets worse and even worse and deteriorates into moderate or even severe depression, it can create mental disruption. There is no doubt about that. But it's not what depression is, so it's really good to be clear about that. Likewise, depression is not a physical illness. This is not, there's just a brain chemistry that's out of whack and you need to fix the brain chemistry. There is something much deeper than that taking place that creates any disruption physically or chemically inside the body. So we need to strip away some of the myths, and I hope the book does that, to get to what depression actually is. And my conclusion, my experience over 24 years of being free from depression, is that depression essentially is a condition based on emotional suppression. Without emotional shutdown, without emotional suppression, you may experience other pain in life, but it won't be depression. There's a section of the book that helps us get clear. with what depression actually is, so we know what we're facing, what we want to work with, what we ultimately can clear. And then we realize, okay, so if there's a habit or a pattern of suppression here, we need to work directly with that. I mean, drugs are not going to fix this type of habit or pattern. Drugs can mask the symptoms, and in some cases they're valuable. I understand. I'm not a lover of the drugs that they prescribe these days, but I do see that they can be of value in some circumstances. And the invitation for us is to get into the root causes of depression. What causes the pattern of shutdown? What conditions that into us, hardwires it into us from an early age? And so we look at what are the sorts of circumstances that can set this up in life. I give my examples of living through various upsets and traumas, having certain belief systems in place, inheriting some generic beliefs from family, from teachers, from authority figures in my life. And then, of course, the biggest part of the book is focused on what do we then do? If we can identify what depression is, what feeds into it, what makes it worse, ultimately, what are we going to do to make it better? And this includes things like stress and anxiety that can feed into depression, burnout that can be similarly associated with, but quite different from depression. These conditions are all linked. And so we're looking at what can we ultimately do to get to the root causes of this shutdown that takes us into such ultimately into such a bleak and dark place. What can we do to really resolve it, not to change our mood, not to give us an uplift for a short period of time, but to be done with the habit, to be done with the pattern, to be done with the condition of depression, and to live lives the way we were meant to live them, to live from freedom, to live from a recognition that there is extraordinary potential in each of us, and to allow that to be expressed. Freedom so we can live with a deep sense of connection with, of belonging to life. Freedom to live in fulfillment, freedom to live with purpose and with passion that comes naturally, not from a forced place, not from feeling like we've got to kind of beat ourselves up to get motivated every day, but freedom to wake up and realize that life is worth living, life is inherently rich, and we're a part of that life. So a big part of the book focuses on what do we need to do to heal the old patterns, to resolve the underlying conditions here. And then when we've done that, and we begin to realize that a different type of energy is released inside us, what practical steps can we then take? Yeah. The practical steps that may not have been available to us while we were suffering from depression. So I'm hoping that it's a workbook, Gabby. I'm hoping that it's a real practical guide and tool book that people can use the process work in, either by downloading and using the scripts with someone else, or by getting online and having my voice, or in other languages. I know there are other readers, obviously, but in English, you're working with me directly. I've recorded all of the beautiful journey process work that's included in the book. And you can just get online and kind of, take some time out to sequentially go through these releasing and healing processes. My prayer is people use it, not just that they get the book and read the book, but they actually do the work, because it's one thing to understand more about depression. That's quite interesting. It can be somewhat liberating, but the total freedom is actually in experiencing the work and doing the work and getting the results. So that's my deepest prayer, that people actually do the work.
Beautiful, and that is so true, because one of the things that comes with this book is such tremendous support. Not only are the practical exercises and introspections printed in the book, but as you already said, they are recorded. So anybody who buys the book, and there's a few support mechanisms that we have that I'm going to share at the end of this interview.
Right.
But there is some really powerful support, and it was the same for me, that some of the processes, the introspections, completely clear anything that has blocked.
That was my experience, Gab. I've shared in the book. Today's versions are more refined than they were when I went through the journey first 24 years ago. But it's essentially what I did to clear depression, what I mean, into tens of thousands of people around the world have done to clear themselves from depression. It's the most up-to-date version of that exact work that is available in the book here. Step by step and sequential. It works. The work works. It takes willingness. It takes some courage. It takes the, I want to say, the willingness to stop and to try something new, to take some responsibility for what is taking place in our lives. That does take some courage. I don't want to diminish that or dismiss it.
No.
It's for someone who's willing to take a genuine look inside and to go, okay, what can I do to help myself, rather than what can someone else do to help me or to fix me? What can I do? And that's a potent line of inquiry when you've got these sort of tools available.
And you really haven't held back in making any and all processes available in the book. I was absolutely stunned and awed by the amount of what you have made available, which is fantastic.
That's a big part of my intention, Gabby. I know that, you know, with the journey, I would say the deepest results we get are when people come to seminars. I recognize that. If you can get to a seminar, come to a seminar. And I appreciate that not everyone can do that. It's not financially appropriate for everyone. It's not physically possible for everyone. And some people just can't, you know, they just can't make the time or the space to do that in their lives. And so I wanted everything necessary to clear depression to be available in the book. So at least potentially people can dive into it, they can use the tools, they can be supported by my voice, by my cooperation with them, if you like, in the auditory, the audio downloads. And there's enough there that people can make significant, deep, lasting changes in their lives.
That's wonderful. And you have also created a seminar around depression. You actually, that has a slightly different name, and it's actually called Out of the Blue.
That's
what
right.
kind of, you have been offering these seminars for quite a while.
Yes.
What kind of results have you had, or have people had?
I would say that a very high percentage of people report back to me that they've noticed significant difference through to freedom from depression. And then, I mean, for most of them, if they recognize the work, love the work, they'll be working with themselves ongoing using the same techniques. I can see you've posted there. This is from an Out of the Blue workshop in Melbourne in Australia.
Yeah.
And it was conducted by Professor Jill Beattie. She's a statistician, and she's a journey practitioner as well. And she came along, and they did pre and post tests with people. And you can see the results here. Depression average scores turning down from 18 down to 7 after one weekend. With anxiety from 11 down to 3, and with stress from 20 down to 8. And this was measured about 1 month after the workshops. And so what we're looking at there is from diagnosable depression down to really not diagnosable depression, from clinically statistically significant results measuring depression, anxiety, and stress down to relatively normal levels. And that's just in one weekend. And then, you know, with the people who've attended those workshops, normally they can take the scripts, take the work, and be more confident to use it ongoing in their life. Because although, you know, the essence of depression cleared very quickly with me, of course, I've continued to use Journeywork, and over the years, life has just got richer, more fulfilling, and freer. The more I've used Journeywork, the more I've enjoyed life, is the honest truth of it.
Yeah, it really is a hands-on, practical guide, and just do the exercises. From our point of view, we would love to offer even more support. So not only do you have the process work available, you get a voucher for a workshop that is quite a considerable amount of money off. So if you do know somebody who can benefit from this work, please reach out to them, share the link with them that's here on this webpage. Anybody who buys the book will get the audio book as soon as it's available. And also something really, really powerful. We're going to do 2 live recordings for anybody who has read the book, where people can literally ask questions of you. And this is only available to anybody who has purchased the book. So it will be live sessions with you. I'm not sure, we haven't got a name for it yet, but it's like Ask Kevin Anything.
Well, think of a good title, I'm sure.
Question and answer sessions with you, so with the author, so you can give direct feedback, you can support people. They would have read the book, they would have tried out some of the process work, and then after a while they can actually meet with you. They can meet with you online these days.
I would love that.
Fantastic. So this is a fabulous additional bonus. So, and if the book is not enough for the people who are reading it, if they really want to experience the work with a trainer, with you in person, then they can come to an out of the blue workshop, either with you or with one of our presenters around the world. And there are quite a few actually, in America, in Canada, in Germany, in Finland, in Estonia. You will be teaching in the UK, so this is something in addition.
Great.
So I'm absolutely excited that the book is nearly ready. Well, it is ready. We're just waiting for the D-Day.
Yes.
And all the information that you need is on the webpage that you have this interview on. So I thank you very much for listening. And Kevin, I thank you so much for
Great
sharing.
Pleasure, Gabby. Thank you for your time
with us,
your
and for sharing your passion, your life's passion.
It is indeed.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.